What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Progressive Gentleman Podcast. I'm Dan.
I'm Matt.
And as always, thanks for taking the time to listen to us nerd out about music. This one is going to be a little different than the norm. We are going to do a best album, album of the year thus far type episode. In the beginning of the year, we had a sort of most anticipated records from 2022. And now that obviously we're a little more than halfway through the year at this point now, right? We kind of slacked on this, but it wasn't an idea we had until just recently. So it is what it is, right? But,
better late than never.
Exactly. With summer kind of just wrapping up, we kind of have been bouncing the ideas back and forth of which records are going to be there at the end of the year, kind of stand the test of time, so to speak, and make that end of the year list for album of the year. So, we've already had a slew of releases. A lot of the ones that we had as our sort of most anticipated records have dropped. And if we really took the time to talk about each one of those, we'd probably be here for a good while. And we don't want to give you another 3-hour episode like that Coheed Artist Spotlight episode. So we kind of just handpicked a few.
Kind of some of the more notable ones, whether good or bad.
Right. I was going to say, we aren't necessarily saying that these are, in particular going to be on our list at the end of the year. These are just ones that we felt we could talk the most about.
Yeah.
Good or bad, like Matt said. I think mostly good. I mean, there are some on this list that maybe didn't necessarily exceed our expectations by any means, but maybe even one or two that sort of fell short of our expectations. But there's also a few on this list that I think exceeded or significantly exceeded our expectations. And there's at least one on this list that the band wasn't even on our radar.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good mix. And the first record that we wanted to start with was one that actually just recently dropped, Unprocessed. They just dropped a record called Gold not that long ago. And if you've been keeping up with them, they've been dropping a lot of singles leading up to this release. So I think a good chunk of that record, although some of the singles didn't make the record, but there were a decent amount that did. And the song that stands out the most to me is Rain. That track to me is one of my favorite songs that has dropped so far this year.
That is a really cool song. I haven't been able to listen to the album in its entirety, but I have listened to Rain, and I do really like the opening guitar riff is really cool, and it's a cool song.
And as a person who likes to pretend to be a musician, the simplicity of that harmonic riff in the beginning, and then how he riffs off of that it's just so it makes you honestly think of Rain in a way. You know what I mean?
It's like trickling.
Right. Yeah. It's like a trickle effect, but it sounds so awesome. And and honestly, a lot of the tracks on this record sort of have a similar feel. Unprocessed as a band is just they're very similar to like a Polyphia with vocals.
Yeah. They didn't always have vocals though. They just recently added vocals, right?
I think,
or they were mostly instrumental.
I was gonna say I'm not 100% sure on that. I do think they have some instrumental songs, maybe records. I'm not super familiar, in depth with their discography. I know they have some songs with vocals that are heavy, not clean vocals, harsh vocals.
Oh, really?
Which is pretty cool. But overall, I think sort of the sound you hear on Real is sort of their, or not Real, Rain. They do have another single called Real though too, but Rain is the one in particular that I'm talking about here. That sound is sort of the sound that's sort of consistent through Gold, the new record. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's crazy to me that these guys can have the musicianship of a Polyphia whilst still, the singer is the lead guitarist. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, that's impressive.
I cannot fathom being able to sing at the level that he sings, because he's got a great voice. If for some reason, if they didn't do vocals because maybe he wasn't confident or something like that, or felt some sort of way about his vocals. They're top notch, and the fact that he can sing to that level while playing at that level
Yeah.
is just something I can't even.
Some next level
Oh,
stuff.
just I don't know like what sacrifices he made to the music gods or whatever, but I need to find out because
He
I'd
found
like.
the pick of destiny.
I was gonna see it exactly. I mean, whatever those sacrifices were, as long as they weren't too much, I might have to consider making similar ones. Because that's just
Take the blood
crazy,
oath.
crazy stuff. But overall, it didn't exceed my expectations just because the singles set my expectations pretty high. But this is a record for me that I think is definitely going to be on my list at the end of the year. I can't, I say definitely. I can't guarantee it. I mean, we got potentially a record from Tesseract coming out. We got potentially a Contortionist record, although we've not heard much from their camp.
Yeah.
There's
Fallujah.
that record. I mean, the singles that they've dropped and the fact that they got Evan Brewer on bass now, I'm all aboard that Fallujah hype train. But
Yeah. That I do feel like that one's gonna rank high if they end up releasing it
oh yeah,
this year. It'll probably
I
be in my
I think
top 3 probably.
yeah, seriously, just from the singles, that record's got crazy potential. But I think Australian prog rockers Carnival are potentially dropping a record this year. I know they released a single. We got another single from Currents recently, and it hasn't
Yeah,
been
it was
long.
the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it hasn't been long since they dropped a full length, so that'll be interesting to see if they put out another record. We got Strawberry Girls, I think. I don't know if that record dropped yet or not, but if it did, I have not listened to it. But I know that
I was looking this morning just to like update my list, and I didn't.
I know they
see
dropped
it.
They dropped a single recently.
Yeah, I think I did see a single or two, but it didn't
And,
look. like
they
the
did,
album
and
was-
they announced it, and they even gave the name. It's like Prussian something. I forget what it is. Prussian something. Because
okay.
they always
I
name
didn't
their records. It's like someplace and then something like French Ghetto was one or something like that, and like Italian Ghosts was one. I have the poster on my wall. I just had to look over to verify that name. Tasmanian Glow was a record, so it's like Prussian something. I forget exactly what it is, but they did announce that that's releasing. So, and those guys are fantastic, sort of in the same vein as an Unprocessed or a Polyphia.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like a Dance Gavin Dance derivative too, but instrumental. So you get a lot of like that instrumental flavor, like that Will Swan like guitar style a little bit.
Yeah.
Swancore or whatever they want to call all those bands that fit into that mold. But yeah, I mean, the list goes on. So there's a lot of records that, we're sort of anticipating still that have the chance to unseat a record like this. But so far it's standing pretty strong, and I'll be surprised if it's not at least in the top 10 at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to listen to it. It came out like kind of at a bad time. It was like, we were getting ready. Colleen and I went on vacation, so it was like
Right.
getting ready for stuff, and then going, and then now coming back and like being at school and stuff. Of like not really listening to a lot of music.
Yeah,
So
we do have lives, we have things happen, work and
yeah.
vacations, and for you, school, right?
Yeah.
Back to school, going
back
full
to school.
full of Billy Madison over here.
Yeah.
But
I'm not going back to the second grade though.
make it sound like you're starting back in first grade. He passed his spelling test the other day. It was great. I was real
Woohoo!
proud
On
of
to
him.
the third grade now.
But yeah, so I actually I'm excited to hear sort of your thoughts once you get to listen to this a little bit more, see what you think, because I know you like this stuff as well. And
Yeah, I like
we're
this
both-
type of music, so
yeah.
I'm thinking it will land pretty high on my list.
Yeah,
and
we're-
just from the singles that have come out, I anticipated landing pretty high on my list.
Absolutely. But moving on to another one, and this one was one that I was super excited about when it was announced because of how much I enjoy this band, and that's the Deer Hunter. They released their newest record called Antimai, and that is their first record into their new concept. They sort of departed from their original concept to dive into this new universe that they're building. The Indigo Child sort of concept universe, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I mean this was an interesting one for me. What do you think?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've not been a huge Deer Hunter fan, not because I dislike them, just like I never really listened to them until maybe the last couple of years. And I did really enjoy like all of the Act albums. So it was like I've just kind of recently gotten into them and gotten used to their sound there. And then this is kind of like a pretty big departure from that. It's like I don't like very jazzy at parts and like
It's
gets
got the funk.
yeah, it's like jazzy, funky kind of stuff in it, and then like it just gets very experimental, and like I enjoy what they did, but I feel like it's to me it's one of those type of albums that like this is cool. I appreciate what they're doing, but I don't know that it's something that I'm gonna be like just regularly like jamming to.
Yeah, it's almost like a niche record. It's like
Yeah.
one of those ones that you'll put on every once in a while and jam to, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be in your rotation like consistently. I feel the same way. And so because of that, I would kind of say that it fell short of my expectations in a way.
Yeah.
Just because of how much I loved Act 5. Really, Act 3 through Act 5 are some of my favorite progressive rock albums of all time.
Yeah,
So,
I figured you were going to say that you were a little disappointed just because of how much you like the Deer Hunter. And honestly, like you're the reason that I started listening to them because you had told me about like, oh, you need to check this song out, and like kind of got me into their catalog. So I'm not surprised that like since they kind of departed heavily from that sound that you were like a little bit like
yeah, I wouldn't fully say disappointed as much as just like it just as much as it just sort of fell short of my expectations. That's really it. Because
yeah.
I
Yeah, I
do,
guess disappointed is
yeah,
like
because
negative connotation.
I do like the new sound, and they do still keep enough of that Deer Hunter, you know, flavor, sound, whatever you want to call it, while experimenting with other sort of sounds or whatever. Like, you wouldn't listen to any of the songs off of that record and not immediately know that it's the Deer Hunter. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
and because of
Yeah.
that, I can't say that they've departed too much from what they do. I just feel like they've almost um sort of honed in on a particular part of their original sound, that more theatrical like side of the acts. Because there's a little bit of that in some of the acts as well, but I feel like they sort of just really focused on that part
Yeah.
and expanded upon it.
I do
And
really like the like concept of it, and I do feel like the album lends well to being like sort of like the teaser to or even like the soundtrack of a movie.
right,
Like I could
yeah,
see this being a movie of like this universe and talk like you see the different districts and or rings as they call
right,
them.
the different
Um
classes or whatever, and
yeah.
very like Hunger Games esque, right?
Yeah.
Obviously not, but I mean similar, right?
Yeah, it is
So,
very similar.
yeah, and just from a music perspective, I think it's an interesting, fresh. Like I think they needed this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think they were getting so stagnant in a way. Granted, I say that, but Act 5 is honestly, you could make an argument that that's their best record, and that's the last of the acts. So they weren't getting stagnant in a sense of like their music was sort of taking sort of a negative hit to their like I just think this sort of re-energized them from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, it's like
And
they took a new direction, so like they didn't end up hitting a plateau creatively of like, well, we got to keep this sound. They changed their sound up and were able to like basically like move the bar. So now that they have like a whole bunch of more like hopefully more creative
yeah,
paths that they could take, future albums in this, in this concept.
exactly. And I'm intrigued to see, is the sound that they took for this record just kind of what vibed with this part of the concept, and will we see a change in style on the next record because that fits that next step? You know what I mean? Are we entering a a dark part of the story, which then lends to them maybe getting like heavier for some reason, or are we entering like a more, you know, action packed type thing where we get some fast paced, like maybe there's some strings and horns and stuff involved, and like it makes you think sort of about what direction they'll go in next, because this was kind of an unexpected direction to begin with. So now you're not thinking status quo for these guys. You're like, all right, well, what are they going to do next? Because those creative juices are flowing. So I think while this record may have fallen below my expectations because of how good Act 5 was, uh, I think it's also sort of re-energized me as a fan, because now I'm like, well, all bets are off. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Yeah. I wonder, like you were saying about like different sounds of like getting to different points in the story. Like, I wonder if they'll like delve in and make like, because this is kind of like the whole like world of all the rings, that if they'll go into like, oh, we're going to focus on this specific ring and take like the sound from, the ring one and like focus in on that type and
And
like
like
make
have
that
like
as the theme.
reoccurring themes. That would be
Yeah.
cool.
And then like, the next album, cuz I mean there are 8 rings, so like that would be a lot of albums
That
to
would.
put out, but like they did 5 acts, so
Right.
they
Yeah.
could
Who
maybe do it.
knows?
Or they could make them like EPs and do doubles, do
That's true. I
like
mean, they have the color spectrum like EP,
yeah.
and each, or the color spectrum collection of EPs. So it could be like the Indigo Child collection of EP. I mean, that could be cool.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're gonna do? I mean, maybe they do. That might be
To
it.
me, like that's the thing that I do like about the Deer Hunter is like the speculation and like their concept stuff is all so cool. So even though like this may not be an album that I'm gonna be like jamming all the time, like I enjoyed it, and also like just the concept is so cool.
Yeah.
So to me, like, I think they did a great job with this one. It just like not something I'll probably be like constantly listening to.
Right. Because, like, for example, and this will be the last talking point for me, and then we can move on, because this is another one that I could probably talk about a lot. But an example for me is a niche record in progressive metal for me is Quiet World by Native Construct, and I hold that record in very high regard. I put it in my top 10 prog records of all time whenever we had that episode,
Yeah.
and so while it is that high for me, it is kind of a niche record. It's not something that I typically have like put on in my rotation, like in songs from that in a playlist or whatever, maybe one or two. And I feel that way about this record too. There's probably one or two that I could put in a playlist, but that's a type of record that, I'll put on because I just want to listen to it, because, I'm in that type of mood. Like, I feel that way about Antimai. I think it's a record that, I'm in just a jazzy, funky kind of mood. I'm ready to listen to Antimai. So I think while, we're saying, it's a niche record, it's not something that we're going to listen to, every day, every week, every month, whatever. That doesn't take away from the fact that it is a really good collection of music. And it's well done, and it's a refreshing new take, new style for the Deer Hunter. And I'm just like you, I'm sure, are excited to see what happens next.
Yeah.
So,
Along for the ride.
absolutely. So moving on to a band that dropped a lot of really awesome records early on, had some lineup changes, dropped a kind of not great record, and then has just come back with a new singer. Andy Chiswick, I think is how his name's pronounced.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's
Um,
Cizik or
was he was like a
Chiswick or
YouTube guy, wasn't he? And like now he just sings in like every other band that you've ever heard of. For some reason, he's the vocalist.
He does
Um,
he does like Twitch stream stuff. I've seen him there, but I think he also does like YouTube videos and stuff too.
Yeah, so just saying his name doesn't give it away because he's in like 40 bands, but Monuments is who we're talking about. So they just dropped a record called In Stasis this year, and we've definitely talked about it on another episode before. So you probably, if you've listened to that, know that we hold this record in pretty high regard.
Yeah,
It
it's really
is-
good.
It is so good. This might the amanuensis or however the hell that's pronounced
Yeah.
for a long time was my favorite Monuments record, and probably like up there in my like just records of all time list. That was probably on my short list when we did that episode, but this record I think is my favorite Monuments record. Cardinal Red, so good.
Yeah, I've listened to that song probably like 50 times. It's so good.
And as if they couldn't get any better, their closing track on that album is called The Sumerian, and
Yeah,
it's
that
like an
song's really good
eight
too.
minute 8 minute just epic prog song. Like that song is so good. So the themes in this song, the guitar tone, sound, style, riffs, everything about this record is amazing.
The album artwork, just all of it.
Yeah,
It's
just
all
it's
so
all
hot.
so cool. A lot of just heavy stuff mixed in with just interesting tempo changes, and I mean that's prog, right? But and Andy's just a perfect fit vocally.
Yeah, I think he does a great job, and he has a really good vocal range. Like he has the like the high register
That like
vocals.
Spencer from Periphery
Yeah,
level type vocal.
but then like he just goes into these like really low growls and stuff too. That is like, is that the same person? Like
Right.
if you've never heard the band before and someone put that on and be like, there's no way that's the same person.
Yeah. And yeah, honestly, just the range in his like harsh vocals. That's just what I'm calling it. I always
Yeah,
just yeah, I
growls,
just
harsh
yeah.
vocals, same
Like
thing.
his range there is very like you would look at him and not think that he would like be producing those sounds from his body. Like it's just
Yeah.
like but it's fantastic. I mean, he's probably one of I mean, I guess it's arguable no matter what I say here, but he's probably one of the best like progressive metal vocalists out there right now. Like I would go as far as to say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like, I feel like Monuments has, like, with this album, I mean, they obviously had a huge following to begin with in the progressive metal scene, but I feel like with having him added in there, they've, they've kind of blown up more. It also helps that they have Mick Gordon on there too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
the
he's
Doom
on
guy.
several tracks on that record.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
not
what, like
sure
three
at
that he's
least.
listed?
Yeah.
I don't know. He may be in
Right.
more that they just like didn't list, but
Right. But yeah, I mean it's very it's a very refreshing it's refreshing to see this as their follow-up record to their last record, which I don't even remember the name of it, which is unfortunate. Before their original vocalist departed. That record was just kind of like it seemed like they phoned it in. They were just like we're expected to put new music out, so let's just throw something together. It was very like uninspired. I felt
uh,
like where
I actually don't know if I listened to that album.
there's like
Maybe if I saw
a
like the
song or two that was decent on it, but overall it was like very forgettable, and I think that was just the general consensus too, with that record. But but yeah, I mean, this record, you could tell that they had like a spark, maybe whether that's from Andy joining the band or whatever it might be. It was called the Phronesis, by the way. I just looked it up. It came
oh
out in
okay
2018. Um, but yeah, I mean, because like Ollie Steele left the band too, right?
uh
He was their like lead guitarist or one of their main guys. Like he left the band too before this new record. So maybe there was just like trouble in paradise or something, or maybe Ollie just was just like had enough with it, or I don't know the story behind it. I'm obviously making sweeping like assumptions here, but I don't know. It seems like a shot in the arm to the band. This record, like it just seems like they're back, kind of, you know.
yeah, it is it bodes well for them. This like if this is their oh, we got our kind of our new lineup and this is our album. It's like, all right, well, this is if this is just them like getting the swing of things and like building the band chemistry, is like I can only imagine where they'll go from here.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this one for me is another one that I'm fairly confident will be on my list at the end of the year. And uh, just overall, very, very, this exceeded my expectations just because of how sort of below my expectations the Phronesis was, that 2018 record. Um, So really, really excited to see what comes next. Even though this record just dropped this year, like I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. And I know they're also touring right now. Um, and they're probably coming somewhere close to us, so we'll have to look into that because I would love to see some of this stuff live.
Yeah, I think when I looked, I think they were like Cleveland maybe was
Not
the
too far.
closest
Yeah, not too
location that they
far.
had. Yeah, not too far.
But yeah, if you've not listened to this record, go check it out. And we're gonna move on to a record that probably any prog metal fan has probably jammed at this point, and that's Meshuggah's new record, Immutable. I know we talked about this already as well on another podcast episode, but hey, this is about talking about which records are still standing out. And this is one of them. Meshuggah, sort of the heavy hitters in progressive metal and gent, right?
Yeah.
They're the gent godfathers, right? So, yeah, I mean, just crazy crushing riffs that you expect from Meshuggah. It is a Meshuggah record. Like, it's kind of like an obvious statement, right? But
Yeah.
if you've ever heard Meshuggah music, this this is just in that same mold. They didn't do anything crazy different or anything like that. It's not like a Deer Hunter who went from their previous sound to just a crazy injection of funk and jazz. Like this is just your standard run of the mill Meshuggah record.
Yeah, as soon as you put it on, like you immediately know it's Meshuggah, and it's they don't break the mold with their sound. Like they're not throwing in any like new weird instruments or doing anything like that, but just in their just pure talent with their instruments and showing like how much they can push the heavy down tune chugginess of their music, and just like throw in like slight variations that you kind of pick up on that Meshuggah is known for, like in Bleed. They just throw that like slight bend in there. It's like the same riff, but they just like bring it back and make slight little changes. It's like, oh, I see what you did there. Like that's kind of the Meshuggah way. And this album is very much more of that.
Yeah.
It's really good. I think for me, it landed like about on par for what I expected because, it was just kind of more of the same. It wasn't like too much of a change. I honestly don't know if I would like what I would want. If I'd want them to change their sound a lot, just because like Meshuggah is Meshuggah. And if they change their sound too much, I don't know, what direction they'd take it.
That's kind of the weird, like there's a lot of bands that I feel like fall into that category for me. Like Animals as Leaders is one. Bands that put out super similar sounding stuff because that's just who they are. But because of that, you're like, all right, well, this is just more of the same, But if it changed, you would almost immediately criticize it. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, well, what are they doing? Why it wasn't broke? Why did they try to fix it? Like, but then at the same time, because they constantly do the same thing, it's almost like it doesn't stand out either. You know what I mean? Like for me, like this Meshuggah records, I would be surprised if this is on my top 10 at the end of the year. Just being honest, because I listened to it, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times, maybe more than that. There might be a couple songs on playlists or whatever, but it's not a record that I feel like, that new Monuments record, I'm gonna, I've been jamming that for a while, and it's, it was a refreshing change, and maybe just because it exceeded my expectations, that's why. Like I would go back to a record, I would go back to that record 10 times before I think I would go back to this Meshuggah record. And that's not a knock on the music. It's just kind of like what we're saying. They're stagnant in a way, but if they were to change, we would probably criticize them. But it's
they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
It's like a catch-22 or whatever. It's I don't know. It's great. They're great musicians. They're great at what they do. They inspired an entire genre, right? But it's like,
yeah, I think that's the problem. Is they're at the pinnacle, and it's like, where do you go from here? Kind of. It's like, well, we just try and make more stuff that sounds different enough to like put out a new album. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, and to me, like, it's I feel like it will hit my top 10. I mean, right now it's definitely my top 10, but also like I'm way behind on like album releases. So
Yeah.
I'm sure like it may settle a little lower than where it is for me now. Like right now it's in my top 5. It may like go a little lower than that, but I feel like it will still stay in my top 10 just because, it's Meshuggah and
And we're getting close to the end of the year. Who knows what else? I mean, there are a lot of records that are
yeah. There's
coming
definitely
out.
potential for some movement for
Yeah.
sure, but I
Yeah.
think Meshuggah will still be on there because they can afford to drop like 5 or 6 places and still be in my top 10 right now.
Well,
So
there you go. Yeah, I mean, I say I would be shocked, but it could happen. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's late, you know. No, I'm just kidding. It could happen for sure, and I think there's too many, that we're still going to talk about. Plus, we talked about already. Fallujah is going to be dropping a record. Potentially the Contortionists. Potentially Tesseract. These are all bands that I personally, vibe with a lot more than Meshuggah. But I respect Meshuggah for who they are, and I do enjoy their sound, and I respect them as a whole. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But this next one I know is high on your list. I don't know
yeah,
where it is exactly, but I know you've been a big fan of this record. I enjoy it as well. It's not necessarily my favorite thus far, but I did enjoy this record, and I want you to talk about it. So go ahead and take it away.
yeah. So Fit for an Autopsy. Oh, what the future holds. It's, I mean, just like the fact that they were following up from Sea of Tragic Beast, which also was just a fantastic album. Um, it's kind of one of those things like they do have a very similar sound from Sea of Tragic Beast, but I think like they took it in a different enough direction. And they've got some really good songs on here. Just Far From Heaven, I think that was one of the singles that they put out. That song is awesome. Savages, I think, is probably my favorite track on the album, but it's just super heavy. And a similar vein to Meshuggah, just super crazy heavy, and they actually just recently did a cover of Lamb of God's "Walk with Me in Hell" too, which was
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it was pretty sweet. So I just love Fit for an Autopsy's music, so like I'm just kind of I guess partial there. It was like,
Yeah.
and they, I mean, I had high hopes for this album, and I think they hit those high hopes. So yeah, I think currently I probably got them in like maybe third on my list so far.
Wow, that's lower than I thought. I thought they'd be like one or two. I was
Let's see.
thinking
I'm pulling
maybe
up my
I was
list
thinking
here.
maybe Monuments might be higher, maybe I don't know, but we don't need to talk about that. We don't know. None of this is definitive. We have
Yeah,
no.
I mean it still
But it's
definitely can move,
yeah. The
but
fact it's top three,
yeah, they're
that's
actually number
high.
2. Yeah, so
Nice. I don't have any order for me. I just I typically do all my like
cram it in
album
December.
ranking and scoring and stuff like all in December. Yeah, exactly. I just
I
sit in a room and just
I
go
try to
over
like
everything.
give my like initial review like when I listen to the album, and then I'll like revisit everything in December and like see to make sure it wasn't just like recency bias.
Yeah, I try to like
That's what
I
I
like
normally
make
do.
mental notes, and I do have like a list. I just don't have any like rankings or scores or anything. I have a list, and then I start to put scores of some kind towards the end of the year.
Yeah. We each
But
have very different strategies.
yes, but yeah. I mean, I super like this record as well. It's very heavy, just crushing riffs, and I get into heavier moods like that as well, where I just need something just like that, right? Just crushing heavy, and this is one of those records that I'll typically put on in those scenarios. So, they could very well make my list as well, and that's as we have discussed many times, I've been trending more prog rock slash like that like progressive metalcore sound, like Monuments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I like to get heavy too, So
I've like, I mean, I definitely enjoy the like progressive metalcore, but I don't know, lately I've been getting into like, probably just with Lorna Shore putting out stuff. I've been doing more of like
Dropping back into the deathcore scene.
I've been going like heavier and going like tech death and like just straight up deathcore and
Would we consider
stuff.
is that Lorna Shore's deathcore, right? They're like just
Yeah.
like this generation's Whitechapel.
Yeah, only
Basically.
better.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Whitechapel.
Like
but
somatic defilement era.
yeah, if we're
Whitechapel.
talking like OG Whitechapel,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, Will Ramos is just like, man, he's
Yeah,
just
he's an interesting character.
he's wild. And yeah, I think just like with that tour and like they've been putting out singles and their EP that they put out was just so awesome. And Fit for an Autopsy is just kind of like in that vein. I mean, they're definitely obviously different, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like it hits that progginess a little more. So it's kind of like just it's a little more up my alley than just like the straight up deathcore. So yeah, it's this album hits high for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm excited to see where it ends up for sure. But moving on to a band that
This is
not as heavy. And this is a
Change
band
up.
we just discovered this year, last year, this year. Time doesn't make sense.
It was in the winter months, but I don't
Yeah,
know
but
if
it
it
could
was
have
like
been like
January or
January
like
or
December of
February,
last
yeah.
year.
So these guys were touring with Intervals, and they actually filled in for was it like
Idola.
Idola? Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say it was one of those Dance Gavin Dance derivative bands. So they filled in for Idola on the Intervals Thank You Scientist Cryptodira tour, and we actually got to meet these guys, or we met the singer.
Yeah, we talked to the
and
guitarist too.
yeah,
at
the
merch
guitar. Well,
booth.
they both of the singers.
Or-
'Cause
yeah.
he does like the harsh.
And they both
vocals.
play guitar too.
And they both play guitar. So we met the guitarists / singers of this band. They're called Satyr, Satyr, pronounced Satyr. They just released a record called Totem, and so they had what was their original record called, like Picturn or something like that.
Is Picayune?
I don't know how that's
Something-
pronounced. Yeah, I might be mixing that whatever you just said in Nocturne by Human Abstract, because that's a band I comped these guys to recently, and it kind of just clicked. Their track called Totem that's the title track of this new record, Totem, started giving me like Nocturne era the Human Abstract vibes, which I was like, I've been wanting a band to like. I've just been wanting the Human Abstract to come back in some form. But
this hits that
yeah,
spot for
it
you.
like scratches that itch for me a little bit. Like I can wait for Dean to put the Human Abstract back together again just a little bit longer now because of this record.
Yeah, they have a lot of that Protest the Hero sound too.
Yeah.
Which, like, I enjoy Protest the Hero, but I think like Satyr's vocals are a little more approachable for me. Like I enjoy their sound a little better than Protest the Hero.
Protest the Hero almost has that slight like power metal style.
Yeah, I think
it
it crests too much into that power metal side for me that I'm like.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I like the higher register stuff. I know we've talked on numerous episodes. Like I like Good Tiger and Hail the Sun and stuff, but when it crests too far into like the power metals, where it kind of loses me. I'm not too into the power metal side of stuff.
Some of Protest the Hero stuff is okay, but yeah, most of it kind of the vocally just goes a little too far for me. But Satyr is like the perfect blend of that. It's almost like, and I feel this way about the Human Abstract too, and I guess I never really fully put this together. But Satyr's kind of described themselves almost as like progressive, like emo core or something like that. And while I don't consider them an emo band at all, you kind of get that sound a little bit of like older like emo records, but like heavier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of like Fall. I think I might have said this before when we talked about them. Is like they give me like Fall of Troy vibes a little bit, and like in that kind of vein of stuff. But definitely like I don't think I would throw them in that category. I mean, maybe they would classify themselves there, but I feel like to me, they belong more in the like camp of Protest the Hero than like a Fall of Troy.
Yeah,
I like Fall of Troy too, though. But
yeah, I think it's just more bands that used to get associated with the emo scene a little bit, like the heavier bands, like From First to Last, a little bit, like some of their stuff used to get categorized as emo for good reason, but then a lot of their stuff to me never made sense in that category.
Yeah.
But they're not like from first to last, by the way. I'm not trying to direct comp them. I do
Yeah.
think like the Protest the Hero and the like Human Abstract and Fall of Troy comps I think are way closer. So I would say if you like any of those bands, this record is definitely for you. It's consistent the whole way through. Both of their full lengths are fantastic, and
Yeah.
they're just a great group of guys too. To be honest, I mean, just from the limited time we interacted with them, they took the time. I mean, we were talking to the clean vocalist, and to the point where like the tour manager had to come and be like, "Yo, like we got to get in the bus or whatever." Like he sat there and talked to us for a solid like 25-30 minutes. Like
Yeah, it was like
signed.
after the show was done, we were like
Yeah.
everybody had like vacated the building and we're
We
just
were
like
just the
chatting with
last,
them.
yeah. It was just me, you, Colleen, and the singer of Seder just standing there talking like we were the last ones in the building. People were just, they were cleaning the floors and shit. And we're just standing there bullshitting. So super, super nice. I mean, really personable. And I mean, the guitarist was the same way. He signed our stuff as well for us.
Yeah.
And, and harsh vocalist, guitarist / harsh vocalist, but yeah, great group of guys, really great musicians. I would even put them in like this. They're borderline like Swancore, like Dance Gavin Dance derivative as well. Like I mean, they made sense to sort of replace an Idola
Yeah.
on that tour.
I think so.
Like I would put Idola as a comp as well for some of their stuff.
I'm honestly like I had never listened to Idola before, and I listened to them, and then they got removed, like they dropped
Yeah.
off the bill,
And I love Idola too.
and I really enjoyed them, and so I was kind of bummed at first, and like having not heard of Seder before then, I was like, oh, I've never heard of them, and I hadn't heard of Idola though, so I was like, oh, I'll check them out, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
I'm excited for this, and yeah, they put on an awesome show too. So like they're awesome live. They're in. So if you haven't listened to them, catch a show if they're. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
touring now or not, but
Don't know either. I think they're looking to tour.
I can imagine since they just put out the new
yeah,
album that
I've
they'd want to.
I've seen them sort of saying, "Hey, we're trying to put some shows together." I don't know if they're actively touring, but check them out if they are. Catch a show if they ever come to a town near you. Definitely worth it. But yeah, moving on to keep things flowing here because it's gonna be another long one probably.
Yeah.
But this next record, this next band, they dropped a record like 2 years ago called All Hail that was very high for us. And that was before we were even podcasting. So,
Yeah.
fast forward to today, they just released a record called Death Rattle Sing for Me. That's Norma Jean. What did you think?
I enjoy it. I've only listened to it through twice, so I need to like kind of sit with it more and give it like give it its time. I think for me, I don't like it quite as much as Polar Similar and All Hail, like their last two albums. But there are definitely some like really heavy songs on there. Like I know we were talking before the show, and it's like some songs that are like more heavy than they have any right to be.
Yes.
And like, and I definitely agree with that. But there are some on there that like
Are just weird.
the direction is kind of like I wasn't a big fan of. Was it the Call for the Blood or the Call
something
for
like
Blood?
that, Call for Blood. Yeah.
Like there are definitely like there are riffs in that song too. So like there's no songs on the album that I'm just like, oh, I don't like this at all.
Throw it in the
Like
trash.
everything is good. It just for me like Norma Jean is like one of those bands that's just like constantly just so insanely good, and is like just I think I have all of their albums. So I love them, and I've seen them
Yeah.
probably like the second most of any band. I think I've seen them 4 times.
I think I've only seen them once, so you got
So-
me beat. And normally I'm
Yeah.
way ahead of you on those. So
Yeah, I've seen them a bunch of times, and like I love their music and stuff. So I think maybe that's why like I came in too hot and set the bar like way too high, thinking like this is
Yeah.
going to be my album of the year, and I think I needed to like set the bar a little lower. I mean, I still think this will land on my top 10. And especially after like I go through and listen to it again, because like the first 2 times I was kind of like doing other stuff, and it wasn't just like sitting down and listening and digging into it. So
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind after my first listen through was exactly what you said a little bit ago, which was like this had no business being this heavy.
yeah,
Um, and I stand by that. I mean, there were times where I thought maybe I accidentally like put Car Bomb on instead.
yeah, they definitely
Um,
do have some car bomby riffs in there for sure.
just
You
like
were saying that.
some of that slightly chaotic heavy, just like thing. It's just just that organized chaos that you get from a band like Car Bomb or a band like Cryptodira. Like just from an instrumental standpoint, with Cryptodira, not the vocal standpoint, but
Yeah,
from an instrumental standpoint, you know, just shades of those guys. So it's like I didn't expect that, and just honestly, some of the heaviest, most memorable breakdowns of the year so far are on this record as well. Um, so I mean, it exceeded my expectations, but I do kind of agree. I think I did like All Hail better. I think I like that version of Norma Jean a little bit better. Um, but overall, it was a really good record. Like I said, a lot heavier than I anticipated, and we'll see where it lands for me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where
yeah,
it's gonna end up.
yeah. I think it'll probably. I think for me, it'll probably come in higher than like I'm like where I'm kind of talking now.
Once it like
Uh,
marinates a little more
Yeah,
for you.
I think it's one of those deals that, and this is why I like revisiting and rescoring albums because I always like go in if it's a band that I've listened to a lot and they have previous albums to go off of. It's like I go in kind of with a mindset of like, oh, this is going to be like top three, and then you listen to it and it's like, oh, it's not top three, and then it's like your brain automatically is like, all right, so it's terrible, and you're like, whoa, 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 no, that's not true. It's like maybe it's not top three, but like it could still be top five,
Right.
and stuff. So I like to revisit and stuff because I do think this will land pretty high. And also like the dudes in Norma Jean are super cool too. Their guitarist, although I think he might be playing bass now, Clay. He's a super cool dude. I actually like hung out with him a little bit at the last show that they played at. He like
Nice.
came and like hung out. It was at Mr. Small's afterwards. Just kind of like watched the other bands play and stuff, and he's super cool dude. So
Very cool.
yeah,
It's always nice to like whenever you meet members of these bands and be doing the podcast and stuff now. Like we've sort of had the opportunity together to meet, like we've met Cryptodira, Seder, we've met Darkest Hour. These bands. It's always cool to meet guys that you've listened to for however long and have come to find out that they're just down to earth, cool, chill
yeah,
dudes. It's always nice. And that's it's a pretty consistent thing I think in our genre, since these bands aren't like big enough to be selling out stadiums to where they're too good for us. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. They're more down to earth guys
yeah,
that like want to like hang out with their fans and like
exactly.
show them appreciation and some love for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a lot more like appreciation and like respect and stuff for
Yeah, we're not just like a sea of faces.
exactly.
We're like, we love you all, kind of.
Yep. So that's always cool. But yeah, Norma Jean, Death Rattle, Sing for Me. We'll see where it ends up. But
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily throw them in like the progressive camp, but just
eh,
consistent with the heaviness, that we have in
they're
the.
like prog adjacent.
Yeah, like I think they're in that like metalcore like
Yeah.
camp that you could kind of throw them in there with like the progressive camp, but I don't think they're not labeled, as a progressive
Yeah,
band.
and
So
we do advertise ourselves as progressive and heavy music, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it
it's
works.
fair game.
But
Just clarifying for anyone like who may somehow have not heard of Norma Jean before and goes to
yeah, I
listen and be
doubt
like,
that,
this is
but
not what I
maybe.
was expecting.
But moving on to probably one of the more unique bands on this list, uh, Astronoid. So they signed with Three Dot Records, Periphery's label, and released a record called Radiant Bloom. And I think it's a super cool follow up to their most recent record, which I think was just self-titled. Um, if you've ever listened to Astronoid, they have a very unique sound. Their vocalist uses some kind of interesting like vocal filter of some kind that almost makes him sound like a borderline android um when he sings. But it's cool though, and it fits with like their just the overall sound of their instrumentals as well. Like it sort of lends to their sound. And yeah, I mean they got blast beats and riffs, and while all still sounding like a band of androids, like it's very interesting. It's hard to describe, and it's also hard to comp them because of that. You know, like it's they're kind of in a league of their own in a way, and it's one of those bands where you either really like it or maybe it just you look at it like why or like what is this or I don't understand. Maybe you just don't understand it. Um, but for me personally, I actually vibe with it a lot. I saw them tour with Coheed and Cambria and the Contortionist, which was like such an interesting, cool lineup.
That
Um,
is cool. I could like I feel like Astronoid fits well with the Contortionist.
yeah,
Like I mean they definitely have a different vocal range, but it is that like kind of heavier instrumentation with like the like not really metal vocals, which is kind of where the Contortionist has been heading. You know, they still kind of have some like heavier chuggy riffs, but like with you know, Mike's vocals kind of leaning more like rock slanted in the last
yeah.
couple. I feel like them being on tour together makes sense.
And they're both kind of ambient in a different way, right? Like
Yeah.
Astronoid's whole sound is kind of like almost through a spacey ambient filter, but where the Contortionist just has like some ambient like some ambient like vibes in some of their songs or whatever, like everything is through that filter with Astronoid. Like it literally sounds like they just I don't know, they plug into like
They plug into a UFO.
yeah, that's literally what it is. They plugged into a UFO, and that's what they record through. Um, but it's so hard to describe them because there's just I don't think there's anybody else really doing what they're doing, and I think that's cool. It's cool to be able to like, for example, I don't really think there's many people, if anybody, doing what Cryptodira does with the way they do their dual vocal style and stuff, and just like car bomb esque instrumentals while doing the change in vocals, while also having clean vocals, while also sometimes having like female guest vocals, while sometimes having like an acousticy riff, but then going into like a car bomb style breakdown. Like Cryptodira is very much kind of in a league of their own as well. Um, Astronoid, for completely different reasons, I think, are also in a league of
Yeah.
their own. Like I don't think anybody else is, you know, putting everything through a UFO filter.
Yeah, I think with Astronoid, like if you are a person who doesn't like the like screaming part of metal, but you like the awesome like heavy instrumentation and drumming, like, you know, the heavy chugs and the, you know, the blast beady stuff, Astronaut I feel like hits that niche.
Potentially, because I know like a lot of people don't like processed vocals. Like
Yeah.
the people who shit on vocalists who use any form of like auto tune or like any type of vocal synthesizer or anything like that. That's pretty much all these guys do. So it's like if you can't get into that, then you likely or if you have a problem with that, then you likely won't enjoy Astronoid at all. But overall, I mean, I agree with you. They have impressive instrumentals. I mean, they'll randomly go into blast beats and things like that too. So it's like, you know, it's an interesting mix of styles while, like I said, kind of being in a league of their own.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're looking for something different, um, or regardless, really, if you like progressive metal, check these guys out and see what you think. Um,
I highly recommend checking them out. I
yeah,
think they're a fantastic band and
yeah. And Radiant Bloom, I do see this record potentially making my top 10 at the end of the year, but We'll see what the future holds, but
Oh, what the future holds.
this next band at the beginning of this episode, we kind of said like there was a band on this list that wasn't even on our radar before this year. It's Rollo Tomasi. So
Yeah, this one came out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
I had until this year, I had never heard of them,
me neither.
and yeah, listening to this album was just like, where have you guys been?
Yeah,
Why have I not heard of
seriously.
you?
Yeah, they just released a record called Where Myths Become Memory. First off, sick album name.
Yeah,
like,
it was really cool.
That's like a prog record just waiting to happen right there. I love the album name. And we've talked about this record before, probably in a general transmission episode or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
But we've talked about the Contortionist as a comp for so many bands, and I think there are parts of Rollo Tomasi that fit that bill. But then it's just, it's an interesting mix of just heavy meets like now all of a sudden it sounds like some kind of just standard prog rock song, and then it goes back and it's a female vocalist, which is also like, some people like to gravitate towards female vocalists, myself included. So, that just kind of like scratches a different itch for me. I don't know why. I just like female vocals in metal.
It's cool. Like I mean, the vocal range is just impressive. And I like that it's not similar in sound, but similar like in style, I guess, like to like Dillinger Escape Plan, where they're like
That's
they
a good
kind of
comp.
get like rhythmy and like you can kind of get into a groove, and then they all of a sudden like hit you with these like crazy like car bomby things.
Yeah.
And
Shout out to Car Bomb. We just keep dropping Car Bomb tonight.
it's like because they're just like that's the band that I think of when I think of like chaotic like heavy riffs.
Organized chaos.
Yeah. So like that's just the band that pops into my head, and and like I think Rollo Tomasi does that, and then they also get some like Good Tiger-y, like Hail the Sun kind of parts as well. So I think there's like just a cool mix here, and I just really like what they do with this album.
They have a song called Closer, and there are actually parts of that song that remind me of Astronoid, and I wasn't able to give an Astronoid comp before, but how we were talking about how Astronoid would kind of fit with the Contortionist, and I've done comps with Rollo Tomasi to the Contortionist. And I think in our earlier episode where we discussed this record, I did say like if you are looking for a Contortionist comp, listen to the song Closer. If you're looking for sort of an Astronoid-esque comp, like almost like Dream in Lines era Astronoid, I think the chorus kind of lends well. Not like I mean, really, the whole song Closer kind of lends well to that like style, like the Astronoid style.
Yeah, I think
minus the vocal filter.
that would be a pretty sweet lineup if it was like Astronoid, Rollo Tomasi, and Contortionist.
That would be
on a tour
that
together.
Would be cool. But Rollo Tomasi, they just recently, or maybe they're about to tour with Cryptodira. They're
Yeah.
right now touring with Cryptodira.
Yeah.
I actually think they're here like tomorrow or Sunday or something.
Oh yeah, I think it. Yeah, it is because you asked about going,
Yeah.
but since it's our anniversary and busy
Boo.
with school
Boo
stuff.
love, boo. Colleen wants to go to the Rollo Tomasi Cryptodira concert for her anniversary.
I don't know that she actually has listened to Rollo Tomasi.
If you show her, maybe she'll be like, you know what? This is what I need. Forget dinner. Let's go have dinner at where I don't even know where they're playing. Craft House. I think they're playing at Craft House.
Is it a Craft House?
Let's go have
some nice plate of nachos,
some wings and tots, and watch Rollo Tomasi, watch Cryptodira just have seizures on the stage. Oh man. But yeah, Rollo Tomasi, fantastic. If you've not heard of them, which I feel like probably a lot of our audience likely hasn't. I don't know. Like, I mean, I only say that because I haven't heard of them, and I just assume that everybody is exactly like me. No, I'm just kidding. If you've not heard of them, check them out. That record, Where Myths Become Memory, I think that's going to be on my top 10. It's consistently good throughout. The style changes scratch pretty much every itch for like what I enjoy, whether it's the progressive rock angle, whether it's the just down the line progressive metal, whether it's that organized chaos that we like in some of that heavier progressive metal, a la Car Bomb and Cryptodira. They kind of do a little bit of everything.
I think if you have a wide range of metal genre tastes, that this kind of does like it does everything that it attempts well, and there's like so much different stuff that it's like it doesn't get samey or boring throughout the album. Like it just is like, okay, what is this now? And it's just like you're just kind of along for a ride the whole time. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't heard of them.
Yep. So let's close out the show by just saying the other record we're going to talk about is Coheed and Cambria. All right, so we'll see it. No, I'm just kidding. Coheed and Cambria, Vaxis 2, Window of the Waking Mind. If you listen to our...
And we'll be back with part 2 of this episode.
Seriously. We're not going to go super in-depth because there's a 3-hour episode out there that you could listen to us talk about Coheed, but everything about this record, it's interesting, meets what you expected, meets prog, like it's you don't expect the like synth pop sound that like 60% of this record has, but it kind of works though, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it was one of those things where it could have gone either way. And I did say on that Artist Spotlight episode, like, this record dropped right around the same time as Stranger Things. And Stranger Things like has that very 80s synth sort of soundtrack like score to it. And this almost fit that bill for me too. So it was like I was so into Stranger Things that maybe that softened the blow for this record. But I ended up vibing with some of the songs that like, teenage me would have been like, what the hell is this? Right. But like for some reason, like, again, I give all the credit to Stranger Things, really. For some reason, I vibed with a lot of songs that I didn't think I probably ever would have. But the prog fan in me absolutely loves the last 3 songs on this record. And Ladders of Supremacy is one of the best Coheed songs ever written. And I'll fight you on it.
You don't have to fight me on it.
Not you. I'm saying whoever's listening to this that wants to go to blows over Ladders of Supremacy, we can do it. As long as it's playing, because it'll amp me up too. So I'm ready to go,
It's honestly, it's one of the few songs that like I've used the repeat song feature on Spotify for.
Yeah.
It's like I normally don't do that because I'm like, why would I want to listen to the same song back to back to back to back? But now I'm like, well, I know why this feature exists.
Yeah. It's honestly one of my favorite songs probably ever, to be honest. And it's like...
It's definitely up there on mine too. There's just something about the flow of that song. Like it's just got that like...
It's the Willing Well era, like Good Apollo era, like Coheed and Cambria at its finest, brought back after listening to just 40 minutes of synth pop, and then all of a sudden it just drops into that, and you're just like, wow. Like, and maybe that like helped enhance it, but maybe at the time, maybe for that initial reaction, but now I go back and listen to it and just the same like level of excitement every time I hear that song come on. So.
Yeah, that's like one of those songs that like you're just listening to, it's like, oh, I'm just doing something around the house, and like it comes on and you just start like headbanging and dancing to, dancing around to, and that's
so good,
such a fantastic song.
And just like I said, the last three songs on this record are like in the same vein as the Willing Wells, which are some of the best prog rock songs ever written. So
yeah, and Window of a Waking Mind, like just to finish it, is like
it's like a prog opera.
Yeah, there's like a part where you just want to do the Carlton dance in there, and
that's like my favorite part of the song too.
Yeah, it's just like, and it comes out of nowhere. You're just like, what just happened? But like it fits so well despite being so different, and like that song just, it's those last 3 tracks are just fantastic. I mean, the whole album is really good, but just like
there are songs I could do without.
Yeah, I mean, like there are ones that I think are weaker in comparison to the vast catalog that Coheed has, but
like Our Love is one of my least favorite Coheed songs ever written.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I enjoy it. I mean, like
I think it's I think it's like it feels forced. Like it doesn't sound. I just don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I enjoy it. I mean, I generally am
Well,
not.
you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm generally not like not a huge fan of like the softer side of Coheed songs. But like I mean, I just to me like the worst Coheed song is still a very good song in general.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not saying,
but
I don't like the song actually. I'm gonna be real. I'm just being real. I like if you want to get into like the soft, lovier songs or whatever. Like I would take Subtraction over that. I would take Two is my favorite one over that. Love Protocol, although Love Protocol is not really like soft, but there's just so many. Wake Up, obviously, that's not like super. I mean, it's lovey, but then it's not. It's like I don't know. Between that and like, but then again, like I'll say the same. Like Good Apollo 1 is my favorite Coheed record, and Always and Never is like one of my least favorite Coheed songs. So
yeah, I mean, you can't have like I
Yeah.
mean, you can have, but it's very rare to find an album that's just like every song is like top.
other than that song, Good Apollo is unskippable.
I
To
mean,
be
I don't
fair.
skip.
I don't skip it either, but like really, Good Apollo doesn't start until Welcome Home drops. And you know what I mean. Like that's when it starts, really, for me. But yeah. So, anyways, because if we keep going, we're gonna, you know what I mean. So,
Don't get Dan fired up.
I gotta cut the cord on this kind of. Get it? Coheed fans will get
Waka
it. Anyways,
waka.
yeah. So that was the last one we wanted to talk about, but I do want to just ask you the question: what are your front runners, top 2, top 3 right now? Because I'm curious. Because I want to see. Because I'm gonna give mine as well, and I want to see where those 3 end up at the end of the year. I'm kind of intrigued by that.
Top 2 or what are we?
Whatever you want to say.
So not necessarily in a
It doesn't
particular
have to be in
order,
an
but
order. Yeah.
my top 3 so far will be Coheed, Fit for an Autopsy, and Monuments are probably my top 3.
Nice.
Followed by the close fourth is probably I would say it's probably like pretty close between Rolo Tomasi and Meshuggah is like my honorable mentions.
My top 3 are close too. So Coheed, Monuments, and Seder are my 3 favorite right now.
Okay. Yeah, your list is pretty similar.
But I think Monuments right now is in the lead.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just think from a consistency standpoint, as much as I love those last 3 tracks on that Coheed record, Monuments from start to finish, that In Stasis record is just banger after banger for me. So, and we'll just blame Our Love, honestly. Like, why'd you have to do that? But anyway, no, I'm just kidding.
Why'd you do that?
But yeah, and are there any records that you are looking forward to right now that you think are gonna like sort of surpass the ones we just talked about today?
Well, I guess
announced or anticipated. I mean, maybe there are some that just aren't announced yet that might come out. Like if the Contortionist drops a record, that's probably going to be up there, but I don't think they're going to actually drop one.
Yeah, that was my thought too. And then also, like, I know Periphery has had a bunch of posts about them like recording stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking early 2023 for both the Contortionist and Periphery.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be so sweet if they dropped them at the same time and then did a tour together.
Oh, if they toured together, that'd be sick.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, there's been no single drops for Periphery. They're not like touring or anything, so like I don't know when they'll drop it, but just based on the timing, like even if they dropped a single today, like they're pretty much like on par that they would maybe have put an album out by like December, but otherwise, like,
yeah,
unless they start dropping singles now, it won't probably come out till next year. So like on my list, it would be Periphery, Contortionist, Tesseract if they
Tesseract
put something
for
out.
Sure. I know Tesseract on their like festival runs that they've just recently done have been playing new songs.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you sent me that clip of,
and it sounds heavy.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty confident that they're either like in the process of wrapping up their new record, or
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like
no,
rapping,
not like
like they're
rapping,
gonna be like new
no,
metal.
no,
I
I
was
mean
like,
like
what?
wrapping up. Sorry, no, that was probably a huge mislead there. No,
Yeah, I was like, all right,
wrapping
you
up.
lost me. You had me at screams, you lost me at new metal.
No, I think they're in the process of like putting the finishing touches. How about that? That sounds better.
That's better.
On a new record. So I think it wouldn't be a stretch to see them drop a record like November, December timeframe. Fallujah, we already talked about that, but Fallujah's new
Yeah,
record is going.
that's
to
why I
be
didn't
up
mention
there.
them because since we had already
And,
talked. But yeah, I expect that to be very high on my list.
Dayseeker is dropping a record in November, and the two singles that they dropped, Neon Grave, and I don't remember the other one. Without Me, maybe? Without Me, Without You, Without Me. It's something like that.
Yeah,
The two singles that they dropped have me very excited for that record. So I think that has the potential of being a top, easily a top 10 for me, just based on the singles.
Yeah,
I really like their sound.
I hadn't listened to them until you shared it like right before we started recording, but I did like them. I don't know that they'll make my top 10, but I'm definitely intrigued and we'll definitely give that a listen when it comes out.
Yeah, I think definitely go and listen to their other full length record. I don't remember the name of it, and this is me talking to you, not the audience, but also the audience. But go listen to their. I think it came out in like 2018. I think you'll like it, and I think it'll get you pumped for the release. But
Cool.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll have to
those
check that
those
out.
are the two big ones for me is Fallujah and Dayseeker. But I also think, if Tesseract or Contortionist get their shit together and drop a record before the end of the year, that's automatically a contender just because of how high we hold those bands. But yeah, so that's a wrap here. I know we didn't talk about a band like Dance Gavin Dance. I know we didn't talk about, Under Oath dropped a record. I know we didn't talk about Owl's record or North Lane's record. So there's a lot of records. Porcupine Tree dropped a record. So I'd love to hear what other people think. We did recently make a post kind of asking people what their top album for 2022. We saw a lot of Coheed. We saw a lot of Deer Hunter. Saw some Dance Gavin Dance. Saw some Royal Coda. So definitely go weigh in on that post. We're definitely interested to hear. And maybe we just completely missed one off our radar. Go listen to our anticipated records of 2022 as well and see just sort of what we've completely whiffed on, because I want to know. And if there's a band that I've not listened to before, I want to listen to it. So
Yeah, I always enjoy being able to discover new bands, and whether that's through like just digging in Spotify or people just messaging and be like, "Hey, check this band out." Either way, like it's cool discovering bands. So yeah, definitely let us know if there's some glaring gap in our list that we should be
absolutely
listening to.
Absolutely. But we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And thanks for the 300 followers on Instagram, too. We just hit that 300 mark. So thank you all for that. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, we also we surpassed 900 plays too. So,
and we also, we've been charting on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts recently. I think we just hit like top 150 or something like that for like the music podcasts or whatever. So that's awesome. So thank you guys so much for the support. Probably have some exciting announcements here soon as well. So just stay tuned to the socials and to the podcast, and we appreciate it, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks.